President Trump at it again, this time pissing off the Swedes after alleging that there was a terrorist attack in Sweden. Watch.
You look at what's happening in Germany. You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Sweden. Who would believe this? Sweden. They took in large numbers. They're having problems like they never thought possible. You look at what's happening in Brussels. You look at what's happening all over the world. Take a look at Nice. Take a look at Paris. We've allowed thousands and thousands of people into our country, and there was no way to vet those people. There was no documentation. There was no nothing. So we're going to keep our country safe.
So after that happened, that rally, because it wasn't really a, what was it, a rally?
It looked like a rally to me.
Yeah, it was pretty much, I mean, I don't know how to describe that. It felt like a campaign rally. After that occurred, Twitter lit up. People calling out Donald Trump. First, we have Carl Bildt, who's a former prime minister. He wrote, Sweden, terror attack. What has he been smoking? Questions abound. Even Chelsea Clinton got in on the mix. She says on Twitter, what happened in Sweden Friday night? Did they catch the Bowling Green massacre perpetrators? And then there's a lot of people that were ticked off, saying, here you are, Donald Trump, attacking the press for fake news, and you yourself are not doing your due diligence to make sure that whatever you report is factual. But then there was also some funny tweets, too. Paul Lamb, a lot of tweets about IKEA. Paul Lamb tweets, Trump believes terror group IKEA may be behind Sweden attack. And then we have Ricky Davila. It's all becoming clear the non-existent people of the Bowling Green massacre got lost in an IKEA, thus creating the Sweden incident. And then Donald Trump himself, he took to Twitter on Sunday to clarify his statement. He tweeted, quote, my statement as to what's happening in Sweden was in reference to a story that was broadcast on Fox News concerning immigrants in Sweden. So that story on Fox News, it was with host Tucker Carlson interviewing Amy Horowitz, who's a filmmaker who, according to the New York Times, in that segment, she and in her film asserts that migrants in Sweden have been associated with a crime wave. Now, let's talk about that really quickly before, actually, we can jump to that after the 5 words. So after our 5 words or less, we're going to talk more about Sweden and this alleged crime wave. And then we will also talk about Donald Trump attacking the press and also claiming all the fake news out there. Thoughts, 5 words or less?
Lügenpresse. Melania must hate IKEA. Sweet emotion.
Donald, you're sharing fake news. Okay, so I want to really quickly jump into the allegation of all this huge crime wave in Sweden. So according to the New York Times, they state here that the last terrorist attack occurred in 2010, and this was a suicide bomber who struck central Stockholm, injuring 2 people. The bomber, 28-year-old Iraqi-born Swede who had developed an affinity for al-Qaeda. And then they state here, they go on to say that the attack occurred long before the current wave of them letting in all of the migrants. And then also Henrik Selin, he's a political scientist and deputy director of the Swedish Institute. He told the New York Times, quote, I do not have a clue what he was referring to, Donald Trump. Obviously, this could be connected to the fact that there's been a lot of negative reporting about Sweden since Sweden has taken in a lot of refugees. He goes on to say that the news reports were highly exaggerated and not based in fact. Some of the stories were very popular spread in social media by people who have the same kind of agenda, that countries should not receive so many refugees. He goes on to say that, for example, there was a number of published stories on Breitbart alleging that migrants have been responsible for a surge in crime and for a wave of sexual assaults. And then he quotes here, Swedish officials have said that their statistics do not justify such sweeping assertions and that the country has a high number of sexual assault reports relative to other European countries because more victims statistically come forward, not because there is more violence. Okay, so let's first start with what were your thoughts when you heard Donald Trump state this and then watching the reaction on Twitter calling him out?
Are we surprised at this point? Are we surprised at all that Donald Trump is consistently still attacking the media? And that's actually, so you asked me what Lügenpresse means. And that's what Hitler essentially did to vilify and erode the fourth estate, which is media, which is an essential part of the checks and balances that we don't really get to talk about too much, but it's very important that we do now more than ever. And that's what Donald Trump has consistently been doing, and I think he's somewhat successful at it. if you can't believe the media and then you instead believe Donald Trump, who's constantly lying, then, you know, eventually you won't believe your own eyes. You'll believe what Donald Trump is saying.
You're at a point. I feel like I'm at a point where I have to determine in my head what actually is going on inside the mind of Donald Trump. And there's a lot of options, right? The first one, there's a Representative Ted Lieu, who's my representative in the state of California for the House of Representatives. Is like, I think we need to have, in addition to like a physical, we need a psychological evaluation of the president, because what if he just has trouble determining the difference between reality and fantasy? What if his process of gathering information, determining what's real and sending it out is total hogwash because of a mental dysfunction? That's really pessimistic. There's an appeal to Donald Trump that people find, which is like, he's just like me. He talks to me like I talk to people. And that's one appeal, but I think the better version of that is if I had someone who was smart, who is actually smart, and has that skill of understanding complicated things, boiling them down in a way, and delivering them in a way that I understand. I'd like that. But unfortunately, people still gravitate to Trump because he just kind of listens to stuff, gets the minimum amount of information he needs to reinforce something he already believes, turns and spits it out. And it's okay for not even for me, it's okay for the average person to say, oh, I kind of heard it, you know, whatever. And then they have something to talk about around the water cooler. But with Trump, he thinks it's okay to half listen to something on television, turn around and deliver it as fact. And you just can't do that as the president, because, and you see it in his cabinet, all these people are like, shit, I don't know what to do. They look battered and depressed because they have to be like, normal presidents care. And this guy just doesn't give a fuck.
And the irony is he is so quick to call everyone out that he disagrees with or he feels is hurting his agenda as fake news.
Yeah,
Yet he's
all
the one
negative
that's
polls.
not. Yeah, all
He's
negative
running.
polls. Yeah.
He's
Jason,
running.
yeah.
It was a campaign event. He's already,
Yes.
he's running.
Yeah.
Which means who's he running against?
Right.
Himself.
No. To clarify, what you're saying is actually pretty important. He has already quietly announced his presidential bid for 2020, and he is genuinely taking this opportunity as the president. And this is unprecedented. Other presidents also will take the existing campaigning efforts, and usually when they're incumbents, utilize that same base to do other things, like to push people into to make people more aware of legislation that they want to put forward or things like that. Obama did that. But in reality, they're just essentially matriculating this database, and then they will use those same people for their upcoming presidential bid when the time comes. Donald Trump, on the other hand, quietly announced it instantly the next day and started campaigning and actually raising money for his 2020 presidential bid. And that's insane to me, but he's literally campaigning. And you know who else we've seen this do? We've seen another historical figure of the past who used to do these crazy campaigns. His name was Adolf fucking Hitler. And I can't, it's becoming cliche at this point that we keep drawing the same comparisons, the different, authoritarian leaders, but that's what is going on.
I agree. And when I made that comparison in a previous video, y'all came for me. The comment trolls were on Super Bowl status because I said that's what it feels like. To have a conversation about why Donald Trump does what he does is a supreme exercise in futility. We don't fucking know. And the more Donald Trump is in the media talking, the more it becomes whatever. But Brett, you had said that Donald Trump, the reason why he talks like you, right? So people grab on to Donald Trump, in my own opinion, is because he does come across a little relatable. He's not, there's no...
a billionaire, though. He's
his
still...
language does.
I understand.
Yeah.
And that's what authoritarian leaders do. I
course.
experienced this
We the people.
in Turkey.
I'm one of
I
you.
experienced this in Turkey with Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who did the exact same thing. I won't get into it, but because this is not a political show. But what I wanted to say is, look, what's really scary about this is we joke around about fake news, and J.K. Rowling had hilarious tweets and haha, Seabiscuit or whatever, that horse that fell down a well in Sweden was the biggest issue of the time of that day. But it's not actually a hilarious situation at all.
Not.
What Donald Trump is doing is alienating and developing anti-American ideals across the globe, and also instilling fear upon Americans that Muslims are scary. By and large, every Muslim, it could potentially be a threat, a terrorist. People that have already come into this country that are Muslims were not vetted. That's not real.
Right.
That's a non-factual statement. That's an alternative fact. It's fake news, whatever you want to call it. And when you say stuff like that, then you're breeding hostility towards Muslims that live here, and also hostility towards Muslims that live abroad. And that is the biggest contributor to terrorism. And that will only work in favor of Donald Trump, because when there is an inevitable terrorist attack, God forbid, then Donald Trump can secure even more power and tell people, I told you so. Yeah, I said fake news, but these libtards don't care about you. They don't care about your freedom. They don't care about your American values. I do. I'm the protector, and that's authoritarian speech.
Yes, and what's so scary about that too, as you stated, is it's coming from our president. So it's frustrating enough when we're all on Facebook and we see people spreading the fake news or saying whatever they need to say to bolster their own agenda, whether it's about anti-immigration, anti-refugee, whatever it may be. That alone is scary because there's a trickle-down effect. But when it's coming from the president, some people aren't going to cross-check. Some people aren't on social media. So when someone's watching his rally, on Fox News or whatever news station they are, and then they can't cross-reference or even see the pushback afterwards, they take that verbatim. And then when they don't believe any news stories that they may hear that do push back because Donald Trump has made it his agenda to discredit the news so he can be the one that is the only communicator to the people, that is terrifying, and that is a threat on our democracy.
9,000 people or whatever it was at his campaign rally. Hundreds of thousands of people on the streets today protesting against him. I think that's a good weapon in this fight. So and then there's all these stats that come out that like half of Trump supporters believe X crazy statement. That's also optimistic, that half of the people believe him. And it's our job to kind of not let up on that. And every time that he says something batshit crazy, go tell folks, like, this is the thing he said. The thing he said about people not being vetted, it takes 2 years to get through that process, which is really intense. And it's so frustrating when he says stuff like, we got to stop this to figure out what the hell's going on. It's like, well, why don't you just figure out what the hell's going on? Because there's people in the government who do know what's going on. And just because you turn to the public and say, it's crazy, believe me, like, I don't believe you. And the reason I don't believe you is because I have documentation of how fucking batshit and false all your statements seem to be.
Right.
Look,
Final thought, we gotta go.
What's really sad, though, is that we saw all the contradictions mapped out. We saw all the hypocrisy mapped out throughout his entire campaign run. And people don't seem to care. People are just partisan, and people just want to vote in favor of who they want to vote for, and they don't want to listen to reason. They don't want to listen to whether or not Donald Trump is an insane madman. They don't care. There are still people out there that think Hillary Clinton would have been a worse president than Donald Trump. I hate Hillary Clinton, but it's insane to me that you would ever think that Hillary Clinton would be a worse president than Donald Trump, specifically with in social issues and also the alienation of Islam.
Yeah, and then specifically like the Russian thing.
Or the Russia thing.
It's like the reason that Putin hates Clinton is because she's stronger at stuff than Trump is. She knows how to actually use a military apparatus to check him. And while it would antagonize, it just seems like Trump's saying like we'll have a better relationship with Russia. But like, okay, I don't think that's right. I don't think you would have a better relationship with Russia.
Oh, we could go on and on and on. Please keep the conversation going, and we'll see you next time on Pop Sugar.